We start off in North America today, and polling stations are now open across the whole of Canada for a snap election that will decide the next Prime Minister of the country. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet, who leads the Quebec Souverainiste Party, focused on the French-speaking province, voted in Chambly, Quebec. Meanwhile, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre voted in Ottawa, where he has represented the riding of Carleton since 2004. He was joined by his wife Aneda at the polling station, where 91 candidates are on the ballot. Earlier, US President Donald Trump urged Canadians to vote with the goal of making Canada the cherished 51st state of the United States of America, in a post on his Truth Social account. In response, Poilievre told Trump to stay out of our election, emphasising that Canada will never be the 51st state. Liberal leader Mark Carney also weighed in, asserting that Canada does not outsiders decide what happens here. Let's listen in to Trump's latest comment.
What I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state. We give them protection, military protection. We don't need them to build our cars. I'd rather see Detroit or South Carolina or any one of our Tennessee, any one of our states build the cars. They could do it very easily. We don't need them for the cars. We don't need them for lumber. We don't need them for anything. We don't need them for energy. We have more energy than they do. We don't need them for energy. So I say, why are we doing this? Why are we willing to lose between $100 billion and $200 billion a year? We don't need them. As a state, it's different. As a state, it's much different. And there are no tariffs.
Well, away from Trump's comments, Canadians are heading to the polls. Let's listen in to what some Canadian voters in Ottawa have said.
Just following COVID, there's a lot going on in life, and one of the issues that are important to me. And I follow the news more closely than I've ever done before, so just would feel like I had more of a choice this time.
I mean, I always vote, but this one feels particularly important because of what's happening with the United States. I feel like it's a scary time, and I just want to make sure that I'm voting for leadership that's going to help to take us through that time. Actually, I don't typically vote for the Liberals, but it felt like it made sense in the current environment.
Well, Donald Trump's comments leading up to this election have clearly weighed heavy in the minds of some voters. Joining us to discuss his comments and the election itself is Daniel Wagner, CEO of Country Risk Solution, joining us from Colorado. Daniel, thank you very much for being here with us. Looking at Trump's statement that he's made again on Truth Social, reaffirming his comments around the 51st state of the United States relating to Canada, why do you think he's chosen to do this on election day?
Well, there would be little reason for him to change his tune. That's not like him, and I think that would be unrealistic. You know, it's hard to imagine that in Mexico, whoever is running would be the subject of discussion in America, and the reverse is true with Canada and America. Americans would never really focus on who's running there and the impact it might have on them. But the reverse is certainly true in Canada today. Very many people in Canada are very preoccupied with Mr. Trump and his policies and what that implies for them. And that's why I think that it's highly likely that Mr. Carney is ultimately going to prevail. So the Conservatives blew a 25-point lead before all of this discussion of the 51st state started appearing weeks ago. And now, you know, Mr. Carney is poised to lead and win. And the polls, as you suggest, have him perhaps leading by 2 or 3 points. I would suggest it wouldn't surprise me if the polls turn out to be wrong, in the sense that he probably will win by a larger margin than they're suggesting. That at least would be my expectation.
Yes, Daniel, absolutely. Of course, we've seen some of the Canadian leaders voting, and you talk about that race. It seems like it is a two-horse race, but the NDP could play a role. Also, voters in Quebec could be pivotal if they decide to vote for a party that isn't Bloc Québécois. How do you see those smaller parties having an influence, if any, on this Canadian election?
Well, you're right to point out that typically the smaller parties have an impact on the election, and that's usually to the benefit of the Conservatives. But in this case, I don't see that happening. I think that the smaller parties are likely to have less of an impact on the election this time around. And if that is the case, then what's likely to happen is ultimately that, the Liberals are going to win by the larger margin because they're not going to be giving some of their vote away as a result of what's happening in this election.
Absolutely. Daniel, from your position in the States, how important do you think this election is for those relations? We know, of course, ongoing tariff disputes, but also looking at wider geopolitical conflicts, especially the Russia-Ukraine war, in which Canada has been clearly aligned with European allies, in contrast to some of Donald Trump's moves.
I think Trump is likely to see this more of a distraction than anything else. I don't think it's going to have much of an impact on U.S.-Canada relations at the end of the day because he's got other things that he's focusing on. I think both Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Carney have made it clear that they don't want to be the 51st state. Canadians don't want to be the 51st state. And so I think at the end of the day, we're just going to sort of be in a permanent tug of war with no winner and no loser, because at the end of the day, the Canadian-U.S. relationship is extremely important. Everybody understands that. And if you take away the political bluster, what you've got is a relationship that matters to both countries. So my guess is that there will be a climb down after this election and that cooler heads will prevail.
Daniel, thank you ever so much for joining us. Of course, this election and voting is still underway. Stay with us here on NewsX World for all of the updates and a final resolution as to who the next Prime Minister of Canada will be. But